This is a prequel. I wouldn't say so much to the Johnny Depp movie, but certainly to the classic Gene Wilder Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Armed with nothing more than a hatful of dreams, a young chocolatier, Willy Wonka, manages to change the world and fulfill his dreams in spectacular fashion. If you can say anything at all about this film, you can say that it's sumptuous. A delight of colour, charm, set pieces, songs. No, I didn't know this film was a musical going in. And I've got to put that down to director Paul King. He responsible for the, well, what can you say, sublime Paddington films.
Yes.
And yet, for all that, for me, I think it was a chocolate bite too far. It captures all of King's trademarks box of delights, which he always brings to the screen. A straightforward storytelling approach combined with agile gymnastics. It's always disarmingly cheerful. There is a kind of handmade quality to all of his films, and there's always a huge degree of love. And this works for the most part for me perfectly well, and a lot of that is down to Timothy Chalamet's portrayal of Wonka, which is just one of pure delight and innocence. But there's something missing out of this ingredient, and I can't quite put my finger on it.
So as you say, this is directed by Paul King. He co-wrote it with Simon Farnaby, who he co-wrote Paddington 2 alongside. And you can feel the Farnaby touch within this film. The film, to give a brief synopsis of where the story goes, Willy Wonka arrives back in England after serving aboard a ship as a cook to gain passage home, and has ambition to become a world-famous chocolatier, but finds that Slugworth, Prodnose, and Fickelgruber have a kind of cartel on the industry that stops anyone else from challenging them, while they rake in all the money by having exclusivity on it. At the same time, down on his luck in money, he finds himself at the mercy of corrupt boarding home owner Mrs. Scrubbit. With the help of Noodle, another victim of Scrubbit's contracts, he sets about bringing his magical treats to the world. But who is the mysterious small orange man that seems to be after him? There's a lot of elements on play in here. But at the same time, I think you commented as you're leaving that it felt very slight. And I have to agree that while there's a lot of elements in there, it doesn't feel that it's bogged down. It doesn't feel that it delves into anything in particular. It just carries through. The film opens with a song, which is playful, energetic, and charming. And it delighted me more than any chocolatey treat could. I found that the energy at which it moved from scene to scene with grace, sometimes pantomime charm, actually touched my heart in quite a good way. The songs are a mixed bag, but generally, I found them quite toe-tappingly beautiful.
The songs were delivered by Divine Comedy's Neil Hannon, and they have that lovely wordplay that Hannon used to bring to all of his songs and to all of his repertoire. Who can forget National Express?
I mean, the lyrics.
I'll just finish up. I'll just drop it. But I did find that there was nothing that I'm singing afterwards apart from their Anthony Newley song.
Yeah, I felt that Neil Hannon's new songs kind of emulated the musical charm of that early 70s outing. And over time, I think over rewatches, they'll become more memorable. But it is the nods back to those earlier songs. Joby Talbot, who composed the score, beautifully references a few moments from the 1970s film, especially Pure Imagination. Especially Pure Imagination, which is an ongoing theme throughout. And also the Oompa Loompa song, which as soon as he plays that little flute and starts singing, you know where it's going, and it's a joy. And it reminds you in a way of how good the music was in that original version. I'm glad that they've built around it. I'm glad that it's created lots of new things. It does, I have to admit, it does kind of rely on nostalgia for that Gene Wilder version a little too much to not be able to stand on its own as a film. But that didn't stop me from just enjoying it throughout. And I think what I enjoyed the most was the mixture of cast. I mean, what a cast! No matter how small or large the roles, everyone who pops up on screen had me having a big beaming smile on my face, be it Sally Hawkins in a very brief appearance, Rowan Atkinson, Keegan-Michael Key, Matt Lucas, Matthew Bainton, Tom Davis, Olivia Colman was magnificent, Natasha Rothwell, and even Farnaby himself popping up in a scene that made both of us chuckle. It definitely made both of us chuckle because we were sat next to each other and we both giggled at Farnaby's character popping up a couple of times.
Was that the Night Watchman?
Yes.
That's so. Which I think was scene stealing. To be perfectly honest, I thought that was one of the most scene stealing scenes that, as you said, gets reprised. It's that good. I like Chalamet in it, and I think that he brings something different. It's closer in nature to Gene Wilder than it is to Johnny Depp's. I think it's a fresh-faced take on the central character. There's more of a sort of wry innocence to him. He's certainly light-footed and very, very spry. What I am missing, and I think if there was to be a sequel, I'd like to see more of the misanthropic version of the character that certainly Gene Wilder had in it. And that sort of touch of cruelty that there is in Roald Dahl's creation that was certainly seen again in Wilder's version. But I enjoyed Chalamet's sort of man-child approach to it and the sort of adorable sense of optimism that runs throughout the film.
Hugh Grant as an Oompa Loompa has to be
just divine casting.
What a scene-stealing little man he is. He's not it. It's interesting that the film's been heavily marketed around Hugh Grant being an Oompa Loompa, but he's not on screen very much, but his presence is felt throughout the whole thing. He's charmingly great, witty, snipey, absolutely perfect placing of a big name in a small role, literally.
Overall, I did enjoy it. I didn't love it, but I did enjoy it, and I think that's down to Paul King's take on this particular story. It's got well-written songs that, while they don't become sort of earworms, they don't feel pop-produced in the same way that the soundtrack did to Wish, which I again thought were decent songs, but they felt like they were production line.
Well, it doesn't try to make
any heart to it.
This film doesn't try to make them contemporary.
Yeah,
like I said,
I'll agree with you.
It reflects like the decade of it reflects the music of like earlier decades of the show tunes, whereas Wish tries to be like hip hop and hip and cool with the kids. This feels like it's a proper musical. I found it delicious, delightful, and definitely want to see this December. And I wanted to put the letter D in as many words there as possible.
I found it giddy and ingenious, but rather slight. It was though the soft centers weren't as filled as they should be, but there was just a little bit at times too much sugar on display and not enough filling. But I did enjoy it.
Saturday Night Live trio Martin Hurley, John Higgins, and Ben Marshall, aka Please Don't Destroy, bring this feature about a trio of childhood friends who never really grew up, remaining childishly optimistic despite being stuck in dead-end jobs and doing nothing really with their lives. However, they discover that an old compass that they found as kids could be a clue to the location of the fabled treasure of Foggy Mountain. And so they set off to seek fortune and make something of themselves. But others are also on the lookout for the treasure, including a pair of park rangers and a strange cult of ex-treasure hunters. Treasure of Foggy Mountain is absolute nonsense right from the start. with an opening credits montage following the trio to work that immediately raised a handful of chuckles and at least one laugh out loud moment. Off to a good start, the goodwill earned in that early part held up well for the most part, until the stumbling block of the middle act that throws in a whole chunk of ideas, with many not quite landing, and some falling entirely flat. The film picks up energy and laughs again for the last act, but it does leave you with the impression that this would have made for a great 45-minute short comedy, but was unnecessarily padded out to be a feature. That said, how much you enjoy this will be largely down to how much fun you find the central trio in general. The film does at times feel like a series of sketches all thrown together, and this scattershot approach does mean that whenever something doesn't land, there's pretty much guaranteed to be something else that will land following up pretty soon. The Saturday Night Live vibe can be felt throughout, itself a show notorious for not being as funny as it thinks it is, due to the throw everything at the wall and see what sticks approach that it takes, and a variety of faces from the comedy circuit pop up in random roles. But I had enough fun with this to pass the short time with, and I do think that I'll revisit it down the line, as the rapid-fire nature of some of the comical moments made me miss a few bits throughout. As far as comparisons with other ex-Saturday Night Live stars who move on to cinema, this trio aren't anywhere near the league of The Lonely Island or Pete Davidson, but neither are they Dana Carvey in Masters of Disguise. Worth checking out.